A young woman, standing and covering her face across from a large, masked creature who was reaching out to her and about to touch her on the head with its claw. Sheila stood as still as possible. The old ones were blind, everyone knew that, but also telepathic. They saw the world through the eyes of their prey. It had been a long chase through the dales and over the mountain. Her destination was tantalizingly in reach, yet as soon as she heard the shuffle of its feet, she knew that she would never make it. Safety was just 50 meters ahead, the safe zone where it could not touch her. She could hear the slow thud of its staff as it moved towards her. She closed her eyes, and for good measure, covered them with her hands. It may know she's near, but as long as it can't see through her eyes, there was a chance. A slim one. She heard something in front of her. Then there was a sudden, soft touch to her head. Tag, thou art it. She groaned and uncovered her hands as the others who were already in the safe zone laughed. How the hell did you find me? She asked the old one. Thou should not had burritos for lunch. It rasped in amusement. Rolling her eyes, Sheila sighed. Fine, my turn. She covered her eyes again and began counting. 1, 2, 3, while the others shambled off to hide. Do not look, child. A touch, feather light. She felt the mask begin to grow from her hairline, racing and rushing over her forehead, her eyes, her hands. She tried to jerk them away, tried to flinch back, but the bone-white porcelain, stronger than steel, was relentless. It devoured her fingertips, calcifying flesh into baked clay so holy and pure, it gave life everlasting. She screamed, her back bowed, her lungs heaved, wetness dripped from her mouth as she drooled over her lips. There were no tears. Her eyes were already taken. The snorts subsided, for her nostrils had sealed. Her screams cut off as her lips sealed together, paved over by smooth ivory curves that quirked in a tiny smile. She thrashed as she struggled, tearing her arms off at the shoulders from where her hands were locked against her face, and the appendages disintegrated into red mist. Only the handprints on the mask remained. She swayed, kneeling for a long moment, silent as she would now ever be. No, child, not ever. Sometime, perhaps, but you will learn to speak from the mind. Your arms will regrow. First, you must grow and regain the strength to manifest them. She tried to cry, couldn't. Tried to scream, couldn't. Tried to hug herself and failed in misery. She settled for a nod. Come along. I will take you to the village. You will be welcome there. She stayed where she knelt, unmoving. The memory of the pain, the loss, was still so very fresh and raw. It hurt. It smarted how they tricked her, turned her into one of them. But friends, a whole village, a whole world of friends. She climbed to her feet awkwardly, stumbling several times. Perhaps, for some things, pain was worth it. The elves of Weltmire were not as people oft imagined them. They were tall, thin humanoids with much grace and, if you were fortunate enough to see an actual face, ethereal beauty. And may Wotan help any who face their archers. But the trees of Weltmire are small, scraggly things, not fit for habitation, and the height and slenderness have been diminished in the telling. Many are hunched by extreme age, and the clothing is not magically skin-tight metal, but layers of fabric and hide and fur. They wear bone masks, and only darkness stares back from the eye holes. Still, they have access to magics man can only dream of, and they were always willing to trade with anyone who can reach their home. Lanira knew only the last 2 bits of this. She knew the lands were dangerous, but she also knew Amnar could not be saved by any magic of dwarf or man. She knew there was only one hope for him. "Hello?" she called to the hulking figures ahead, not actually expecting them to understand. "I'm seeking the elves." "Truly?" The voice was like wind through reeds, and seemed so quiet that Laniria was surprised she could hear it so clearly. "Then you have found that which you seek. May your life now be fulfilled." And they all turned back to what they were doing. "You are the elves?" Only one turned this time. "Ah, you seek trade with the elves." "Yes, I need your magics." "Which magics?" "I need to save my friend." "Save from what?" Laniria could hear a smile in the voice and found it frightening. "Death." She felt a pull her mind even before she saw the pale blue wisps of arcane power reaching toward her. Her memories of Amnar flooded through her, and she felt her breath catching. As she watched his death again, she felt her tears cutting through the grime on her face. When it ended, she was crying, weeping into her hands. The keening pouring out of her lungs only brought more sorrow. She hadn't even cried this hard when it happened, possibly because she believed there was a way to undo it. Now, as the elf's finger gently touched her, as she felt it try to fill her with warmth, she knew what was coming next, and how it would break her. "Even we are bound by Ryor's call. None may oppose the Lord of Life." Her legs gave way at that. There is no explaining the pain to one who hasn't felt it. There is no word to awaken that sense of those unaware of it. Perhaps that is for the best. She finally found her center, found her way out of the uncontrollable pain. She lifted her head to see all the elves gathered around her, thin pink strands flowing toward her from each hand. She couldn't tell why, but it made her angry. Finally she spoke. "Then I will talk to Ryros." The main elf gave a light chuckle, the sound of a stream flowing for the first time in spring, the snow still on its banks. Laniria stood herself up and rubbed her face, smearing grime back over the paths her tears had taken. "He lives in the east, yes?" "So they say," the elf replied. "Then to the east. Perhaps there is a way we can aid you, but I must ask for something in trade." "What?" She was cautious now that she knew what still lay ahead. "We have a blade," once owned by Riros himself. We offer it to you. If he grants your request, we ask that you return to tell us the price. If he won't, perhaps you can return his blade." There was a smile in the voice again, just as terrifying. The blade now hung in the air between the elf and her, black and whip-thin. She stared at it for a moment before grabbing the hilt. "I accept your terms. May I see you again soon." "May your life be fulfilled." She stood a moment longer as the elves returned to their former tasks. Then she faced east and began to walk.